Welcome to 34O. This is the first of 3 conversations built around a single idea: the architecture of human connection. Today I'd like to explore an idea that has been quietly taking shape inside me for a long time. I've spent countless of hours talking to people about relationships, intimacy, masculinity, femininity, attachment, healing, sexuality, personal growth, and what it actually means to be human. I've interviewed therapists, coaches, psychologists, authors, and people from all walks of life. At the same time, life has been teaching me its own lessons. Some gentle, some painful, some arriving as love, others arriving as loss. The end of a marriage, the death of a close friend. The experience of falling deeply in love again, becoming a father and watching my children grow into young adults, starting over, letting go, learning that certainty is often an illusion. For a long time I believed relationships were mostly about communication. If 2 people could communicate well enough, everything else would somehow work itself out. Then I became interested in attachment theory, then emotional intelligence, then boundaries, then conflict resolution, then intimacy. The deeper I went, the more I realized that all of these things matter. They matter enormously. Yet none of them felt like the foundation. They felt more like what happens inside the structure. The question I became curious about was different. What is the structure itself? What is the architecture that allows human connection to thrive? Not just romantic relationships, friendships, families, teams, communities. What allows 2 people to build something that expands both of their lives instead of slowly making them smaller? Recently, during a conversation, 5 foundations emerged. Not as a formula, not as a guarantee, simply as observations. Patterns that seem to appear again and again whenever healthy human connection exists. Today I want to explore those foundations, not as an expert, not as someone who has all the answers, but as someone who has spent years asking questions. The first foundation is what I believe everything else rests upon: safety. If I could only choose one foundation, it would be this. Not attraction, not communication, not compatibility. Safety. Because without safety, everything else becomes incredibly difficult. One of the biggest misconceptions I carried for much of my life was that safety meant comfort. I thought a good relationship was one where conflict was limited, where things felt calm, and when there was little tension. Today I see things very differently. Comfort is the absence of discomfort. Safety is the ability to remain connected when discomfort appears. Those are not the same thing. In fact, some of the safest relationships I've seen include difficult conversations, disagreements, tears, uncertainty, and conflict. The difference is that neither person experiences those moments as a threat to the relationship itself. They trust that the connection can survive honesty. Many of us spend years becoming highly skilled performers. We learn how to be competent, responsible, strong, independent, successful, helpful, pleasant, easy to be around. The world rewards these qualities. The problem is that performance and connection are not the same thing. A person can spend decades being admired without ever feeling fully known. I think many people secretly carry a question that sits beneath almost everything they do. If people saw all of me, would they still stay? Would they still love me? Would they still choose me? The successful version, the confident version, the capable version, those parts are usually easy to love. The more difficult question is whether someone can love the frightened version, the grieving version, the insecure version, the confused version, the version that does not have the answers. For many years, I believed strength meant carrying everything alone. I thought resilience meant self-sufficiency. I thought successful people handled their own problems. Life eventually taught me something different. Some of the most meaningful moments of connection I've experienced happened when someone saw a part of me I was trying to hide and stayed away. Not because they could fix it, not because they had the answers, simply because they were willing to remain present. That changed something. It taught me that emotional safety is not created by solving problems. It is created by presence. Many of the arguments we have in relationships are not really about the topic being discussed. The topic is often just the surface. Underneath the argument, there is usually a deeper question. Do I matter? Can I trust you? Will you still be here? Am I safe with you? What makes this particularly difficult is that every one of us carries a different history. Some people grew up in a home where emotions were welcomed. Others learned that emotions created danger. Some learned that vulnerability was met with care. Others learned it was met with criticism, dismissal, or shame. Those lessons do not disappear when we become adults. They travel with us, into our friendships, into our workplaces, into our marriages, into every relationship we build. This is why two people can experience the exact same situation completely differently. One person sees disagreement, the other experiences abandonment. One person sees feedback, the other experiences reaction. One person needs space, the other experiences distance as loss. Neither is necessarily wrong. They're simply responding to different stories written long ago. One of the most profound lessons I've learned from guests on this podcast is that human beings rarely need perfection. What we need is enough safety to stop pretending, enough safety to tell the truth, enough safety to be seen, not the polished version, the real version. The irony is that many of us spend years searching for love while simultaneously hiding the very parts of ourselves that most need to be loved. We want intimacy, yet intimacy requires visibility. Visibility requires vulnerability. Vulnerability requires safety. And safety requires courage from both people. As I look back on my life, I increasingly believe that the quality of our relationships is often determined by one simple question. Can I bring my whole self here? Not the successful self, not the attractive self, not the strong self, the whole self. The answer to that question changes everything. Because when safety exists, growth becomes possible. Honesty becomes possible. Repair becomes possible. Love becomes possible. Without safety, every conversation becomes negotiation. With safety, connection becomes home. When I reflect on my own life, I realize that safety was not something I truly understood when I was younger. Like many men, I learned early that strength meant carrying things alone. Be capable, be responsible, be dependable, handle it, keep moving. There is value in those qualities. They help me build a career. They help me provide for my family. They help me navigate difficult situations. But there's a hidden cost. For a long time, I became very good at being strong and far less skilled at being seen. Looking back, I can see that some of the deepest loneliness I've ever experienced happened while surrounded by people who loved me. Not because they didn't care, because I wasn't showing them all of me. I was showing them a version I thought they needed, the version I thought would be accepted, the version that had everything under control. Life eventually has a way of challenging those identities. Loss does that. Heartbreak does that. Failure does that. Grief does that. At some point, the armor becomes too heavy to carry. And perhaps that is where real intimacy begins. Not where we impress one another, when we stop pretending. Some of the most meaningful moments of connection in my life happened when another human being simply sat beside me in something difficult. Not trying to solve it, not trying to explain it away, not trying to rescue me, just being present. Those moments taught me that safety is not created by perfection. It is created by acceptance. The older I get, the more I believe that love is not measured by how someone responds to our strengths. It is measured by how they respond to our vulnerability. Can they stay present when we are grieving? Can they stay curious when we are confused? Can they stay connected when we're struggling? That, to me, is where trust is built. Not during the easy moments, during the moments when being seen feels risky. Perhaps the deepest form of safety is knowing that we no longer need to earn our place in another person's heart. We can simply be human. I have written about where this began for me. For much of my life, I believed that understanding was the same thing as healing. Whenever something painful happened, my instinct was to analyze it. If I could make sense of the pain, perhaps I could finally leave it behind. For years, this approach appeared to work. From the outside, it looked like emotional maturity. What I did not yet understand was that insight alone rarely transforms us. I had become fluent in the language of emotions without truly learning how to experience them. I could explain sadness while remaining disconnected from it. I could describe fear without allowing myself to feel vulnerable. My mind had become remarkably good at protecting me from the very experiences I believed I was trying to understand. Safety, I have come to believe, is what finally let us stop protecting ourselves from our own lives. Foundation 2. Attraction. If safety is the foundation of connection, attraction is the energy that brings us together in the first place. And yet attraction is one of the most misunderstood aspects of relationships. When people talk about attraction, they often reduce it to physical appearance. They talk about chemistry, sexual desire, beauty, whether someone is someone's type. Of course, physical attraction matters. Pretending otherwise feels dishonest to say. Most romantic relationships begin because something draws us toward another person. We notice them, we feel curious, we want to know more. There's a pull, a spark, a sense that something is happening. But the older I get, the more I realize that physical attraction alone is a very fragile foundation on which to build a life. Beauty changes, bodies change, circumstances change. What fascinates me is that what remains when the initial excitement settles, what continues pulling two people toward each other years later. For me, attraction exists on at least 3 levels: physical attraction, emotional attraction, intellectual attraction. When all 3 are present, something extraordinary can happen. The relationship remains alive, not because it's perfect, not because there's a conflict, but because there's still curiosity, There's still discovery. There's still movement. Physical attraction is perhaps the easiest to recognize. You see someone and something happens. Your attention shifts. You feel drawn toward them. There's a chemistry, desire, a physical response that often arrives before logic has a chance to intervene. But physical attraction alone rarely sustains intimacy. Many people have experienced intense chemistry with someone who was completely wrong for them. The attraction was real, the connection was not. I've come to believe that emotional attraction is often far more important over the long term. Emotional attraction is not about excitement, it's about resonance. It's the feeling that another person's inner world moves you. You admire their kindness, their courage, their honesty, their vulnerability, the way they treat people, the way they carry themselves through life, or the way they face hardship, the way they remain human when life becomes difficult. I've met incredibly attractive people whom I felt very little emotional attraction toward. I've also met people who became increasingly attractive the more I got to know them. Because attraction is not static. Sometimes it deepens. Sometimes it expands. Sometimes it grows in direct proportion to how much of someone's character you get to witness. Then there is intellectual attraction. This is the one I probably underestimated when I was younger. Today, I think it's one of the most powerful forms of attraction that exists. I'm endlessly fascinated by people who are curious, people who think deeply, people who ask questions, people who are willing to explore life rather than simply move through it. One of the things I value most in another person is self-awareness, not perfection, awareness. The ability to reflect, to question assumptions, to look inward as well as outward, to be interested not only in the world but in their own experience of it. I love conversations that wander. Conversations that begin in one place and somehow end somewhere entirely unexpected. Conversations about relationships, meaning, psychology, dreams, fear, purpose, loss, growth. Just the strange experience of being alive. Those conversations create a form of intimacy that has very little to do with sex and everything to do with connection. When intellectual attraction is present, curiosity remains alive. You continue discovering each other. You continue learning. You continue being surprised. One of the things I've noticed in my own life is that I'm rarely attracted to certainty. I'm attracted to depth. I'm attracted to people who have done some work on themselves. People who are willing to sit with difficult questions rather than immediately rushing toward easy answers. People who are curious about life and curious about themselves. Because ultimately, relationships are not static. Neither person remains the same. We are constantly changing. The question is whether we remain interested in who the other person is becoming. I sometimes think one of the greatest compliments you can give another person is this: I'm still curious about you. Not because they're mysterious, because they're alive, because they continue evolving, because they continue revealing new parts of themselves. Many relationships struggle not because love disappears. They struggle because curiosity disappears. People stop exploring each other. They stop asking questions. They stop paying attention. They begin assuming they already know everything there is to know. I've seen this in my own life and relationships too. Yet human beings are infinitely more complex than that. There is always more beneath the surface. Always another story, another fear, another dream, another layer waiting to be discovered. For me, attraction is ultimately less about excitement and more about aliveness. Do I feel more alive in this person's presence? Do they challenge me, inspire me, move me? Do they make me think? Do they make me feel? Do they make me want to become a better version of myself? That kind of attraction tends to age remarkably well. Physical attraction may be what first opens the door, but emotional and intellectual attraction are often what keeps us walking through it. Perhaps the deepest question is not, am I attracted to this person? Perhaps the deeper question is, am I still drawn toward this person after seeing who they really are? Because attraction is not simply about appearance. It's about admiration, respect, curiosity, desire, and connection. And the willingness to keep discovering another human being long after the novelty has faded. When all three dimensions of attraction are present, something beautiful happens. We do not simply love the person, we remain fascinated by them. And in many ways, that fascination is what keeps connection alive. One of the things that has changed most as I've gotten older is my understanding of attraction. When I was younger, attraction felt simpler, more immediate, physical, instinctive. Today, attraction feels far more layered. Of course, physical attraction still matters. I think pretending otherwise creates unnecessary dishonesty. But physical attraction has never been enough to hold my attention for very long. What captivates me now is depth, curiosity, self-awareness, the willingness to explore life rather than simply move through it. I find myself drawn toward women who ask questions, women who are curious about themselves and about the world, women who have lived enough life to know that certainty is often overrated. Some of the most attractive conversations I've ever had nothing to do with sex. They were about conversations on meaning, relationships, dreams, fear, growth, family, loss, purpose, the strange experience of being human. Those conversations create a form of intimacy that physical attraction alone cannot provide. They create connection. I sometimes think the most attractive quality in another person is their willingness to keep discovering themselves. Because if they remain curious about who they are becoming, there's a good chance I will remain curious too. And perhaps that is what attraction ultimately becomes. Not simply desire, but fascination. The feeling that another human being remains endlessly worth exploring. That is where we will pause for today. Safety, which lets us stop pretending, and attraction, which keeps us curious long after the novelty fades. Next time we turn from what we feel to where we are going, shared values and expansion, the question of direction. Thank you for spending time with me today. Until the next time, stay honest, stay present, and stay human.